Thank you so much for having me here, Ari, and the Center for Judaic Studies, and Scott, and the Holocaust Heroism community. I'm Stephanie Fagin-Jones. I'm a psychologist and Holocaust heroism researcher. The genocide, that work? Okay, yes. The genocide perpetrated against the Jewish people by Hitler and the Nazi regime resulted in the slaughter of an estimated 6 million Jews, as well as approximately 5 million racial minorities and others whom the Nazis considered unfit for survival. The vast majority of individuals living in Nazi-occupied Europe during World War II were by definition perpetrators, collaborators, or passive bystanders. However, a handful of heroic individuals and groups possessed the courage to care. While some people engaged in rescue for material gain, others rescued Jews for purely altruistic reasons. These valorous few voluntarily risked and in some cases sacrificed their life, liberty, and position to help Jews without expectation of reward. Even the highest estimate of 500,000 rescuers who helped to save an estimated 250,000 Jews represents a mere 0.5% of the Nazi-occupied population. Who were these noble few, and why did they undertake such risk when staying silent would have been the far simpler and safer course of action? Is there a mystery of goodness that can never fully be understood? Do some people possess an altruistic personality, and can research help us understand these extraordinary, ordinary people who shined a light of hope for humanity during one of the darkest eras in human history? Most importantly, how might we cultivate the personal and situational determinants of such heroic actions so that the moral exemplarity becomes the moral norm? Paradoxically, scores of testimonies and interviews with Holocaust rescuers reveal that most people who rescued Jews under conditions of unimaginable dread did not see themselves as heroes nor view themselves as heroic. Rather, the prevailing sentiment among most rescuers was that their choice was simply the right thing to do, that helping Jews was but a natural extension of oneself, and that one couldn't have done otherwise. For example, French rescuer Magda Trautme, who with her husband, Pastor André Trautme, led the Huguenot village of Le Chambon-sur-Lyon in the collective rescue of approximately 5,000 Jews, put it simply, things had to be done, and we happened to be there to do them. It was the most natural thing in the world to help these people. One of the central missions of Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Martyrs and Heroes Remembrance Authority, established by the Israeli Parliament in 1953, was to honor those high-minded Gentiles who risked their lives to save Jews. Criteria for recognition as Hasidei Ha'olam, or righteous among the nations, includes active involvement of the rescuer in saving one or several Jews from the threat of death or deportation to death camps, risk to the rescuer's life, liberty, or position, the initial motivation being the intention to help persecuted Jews, not for payment or reward, and the existence of testimony of those who were helped, or at least unequivocal documentation establishing the nature of the rescue and its circumstances. And as we just heard, as of August 2023, the medal bearing the Jewish saying, in gratitude from the Jewish people, whoever saves a single life saves an entire universe, has been bestowed upon 28,217 verified non-Jewish rescuers of Jews as righteous among the nations. Why did such courageous selflessness come to so naturally to so few? And why did it not come to most people under the same or similar circumstances? Well, over the past 60 years, heroism scientists and historians have endeavored to uncover answers to these critical questions. After World War II and the fall of the Nazi regime, social psychological research concentrated on understanding authoritarianism and evil, and the preponderance of historical narratives focused understandably on the suffering of the Jewish people. After some time, the phenomenon of the extremely rare event of the Jewish person receiving aid from a non-Jew or group of non-Jewish people began to garner recognition by the public and scholarly attention. In 1963, altruist American Rabbi Harold Schulweis founded the Institute for Righteous Acts to search out and conduct interviews with the rescuers, probing the motivation for their acts, prompting the first systematic studies of Holocaust rescue. To date, the largest systematic psychosocial study of rescue during the Holocaust was the Uhlener's Altruistic Personality Project. The Uhleners interviewed a sample of 700 Holocaust-era rescuers and a demographically matched sample of non-rescuers. They factor analyzed potentially relevant situational, socialization, personality, political, religious, and relational variables, arriving at the construct labeled extensivity, referring to the other-oriented qualities and care and commitment embodied by the rescuers, and constrictedness to characterize the self-oriented nature of the passive bystanders. Using the extensivity model, the Uhleners correctly classified 73.1% of their sample. Subsequent to the Uhleners study, the National Institutes of Health sponsored a study by my late mentor, Columbia University Professor Elizabeth Midlarsky, to investigate the personalities, current helping behavior, and subjective well-being of the Holocaust rescuers. Midlarsky examined correlates of the Holocaust rescue among a sample of 80 verified rescuers, 73 bystanders, and included a comparison group of 43 demographically similar pre-war immigrants who emigrated to the United States and Canada prior to the onset of the war, one of several ways Midlarsky improved methodologically upon the Uhleners study. Using the Midlarsky data set, a robust series of secondary analyses were conducted. In 1993, Gans examined the combined effect of a set of personality of family upbringing variables to distinguish rescuers and bystanders, and found the two strongest predictors to be family cohesiveness, defined as the degree of commitment, help, and support family members provide for one another, and victim-centered discipline, where parents encourage a child's concern for and reparation of the harm or hurt feelings of the victim. Moreover, the rescuers and bystanders significantly differed on the perception of parents' altruistic values and inductive as opposed to a power assertive or love withdrawal approach to parental discipline, parental affection, and the extent to which the father was recalled as being an altruistic role model. I realize that I went ahead a little bit in one slide. Bear with me. Gans's findings were markedly consistent with the Uhleners, thus increasing the reliability, generalizability, and relevance of the role of socialization in Holocaust rescue. So for my master's thesis, I investigated whether these rescuers, bystanders, and the immigrant comparison groups differed in their current personalities. Traits previously correlated with Holocaust rescue, lower cost helping in lab studies, and one-shot acts of courageous altruism were examined, including locus of control, autonomy, risk-taking, social responsibility, tolerance, authoritarianism, empathy, and altruistic moral reasoning, the highest level of abstract, internalized, care-based moral reasoning. We found that rescuers scored significantly higher than both the bystanders and the comparison group on 6 of the 7 personality measures. Although the rescuers differed significantly from the bystanders on tolerance and authoritarianism, neither were significantly different from the immigrants. The bystanders scored significantly lower than both the rescuers and the comparison group on measures of social responsibility and risk-taking, suggesting that this sample of passive bystanders may have been less predisposed to take risks, particularly involving helping another person dependent on them for help because it's the right thing to do. A 3-group discriminant function analysis, best defined by altruistic moral reasoning, social responsibility, empathy, and risk-taking, or what we can think of as dispositional courageous altruism, was able to correctly classify 80.2% of the sample. As you can see, rescuers were more than 3 standard deviations apart from bystanders on this construct of dispositional courageous altruism. For my dissertation, I investigated whether these significant personality traits, as well as perceived marginality, the degree to which one subjectively perceived themselves as an outsider in their community, would distinguish these rescuers from bystanders over and above potentially relevant demographic and significant situational variables, including wartime living arrangements, awareness or witnessing having had a history of persecution by Nazis, previous experience with Jews, and whether an individual had been asked for help. Consistent with some earlier findings, these rescuers did not differ significantly from the bystanders on perceived marginality. Also consistent with the Oliners, more rescuers than bystanders in this sample reported more awareness or having witnessed or experienced a history of persecution, which likely enhanced their ability to empathize with Jews, and significantly more rescuers than bystanders reported that they were asked directly or indirectly for help. Those who were asked, of course, were likely selected on the basis of their compassionate and courageous dispositions. While numerous studies have found pre-war relationships between Jews and rescuers to be highly significant, interestingly, the bystanders in this sample reported having had more previous experience with Jews than the rescuers. However, they also reported having more negative pre-war attitudes towards Jews, suggesting that the constricted bystanders in this sample may have been more like the Oliners' true ethnocentric subgroup. Also, in contrast to the Oliners, this study found significantly more rescuers than bystanders lived with their spouse and children during the war, underscoring their extreme moral courage. No other wartime living arrangements were significant. You can see that's like 0.6 something, it's pretty high. I have 3 minutes left? 15? Oh gosh. Okay. When examined in the context of the significant situational variables, a two-group discriminant function analysis best defined by social responsibility, altruistic moral reasoning, empathy, and risk-taking, the dispositional courageous altruism construct was able to correctly classify 96.1% of the sample. Hence, our dispositional courageous altruism model represented a 23% improvement in correct classification as a rescuer or bystander over the Oliners' extensivity model. These empirical findings emphasize the heightened importance of the role of personality, specifically character strengths and virtues relative to important situational factors in Holocaust rescue. Indeed, data supporting the arguably overlooked and underemphasized importance of the role of personality in the person's situation psychological approach to understanding active and passive bystanderism comes from Milgram's classic electric shock experiments. In a lesser-known study, Elms and Milgram compared the personalities of the subgroup of obedience and defiance and found that the only significant personality differences between the groups were on social responsibility and tolerance. Although no factors identified thus far proves formally necessary or sufficient for rescue, these character strengths and virtues appear so consistently throughout the research and historical narratives across a wide variety of situations, types of rescue, and demographic differences that psychologist Eva Vogelman posited the notion of a rescuer's self. Describing what might be conceptualized as a kind of heroic transformation, Vogelman states, through the rescuing relationship, the values and innermost core of the rescuer were expressed. That core was nurtured in childhood, came to full expression during the Holocaust, and then continued into the post-war years as an integral part of the rescuer's identity, in essence, a rescuer's self. Sorry, this is a different slide. I went a little bit ahead. That many Holocaust rescuers continued to engage in altruism in late life supports Staub's theory for learning by doing, or the gradual evolution of prosocial or alternatively violent behavior. Hence, if people learn by doing by engaging prosocial behavior in as children, it's more likely that they will continue to engage in more prosocial behavior as adults. Indeed, the Oliners concurred that rescuers' participation was not determined by circumstances, but by their own personal qualities. Chance sometimes provided rescuers with an opportunity to help, but it was the values learned from their parents which prompted and sustained their involvement. Consequently, in 2019, I introduced pro-socialization, which we discussed, a humanistic theory of parenting based on, I think about a time, based on the experience of heroic altruists, notably heroic rescuers in the Holocaust. Let me just skip ahead here. I just want to say that, okay. Paradoxically, such allocentric behavior may confer the deepest feelings of meaning, purpose, life satisfaction, and sustained well-being for the helper across the lifespan and intergenerationally. In so doing, pro-socialization may benefit humankind by the sustainable development of morally engaged, other-oriented individuals and communities committed to embracing the common humanity of all people, and to encourage kindness, compassionate, awareness, and morally courageous action, both proactively and reactively, against anti-Semitism and hate. You saw that there. If humanity is going to survive the metastasis of authoritarianism and genocide into the 21st century, no less is required than our commitment to do everything humanly possible to understand, facilitate, and emulate moral, courageous, humanitarian actions of the Holocaust rescuers. Thank you.